Hey guys, thanks for tuning in here. This is Anthony, and this is a second video in a series of videos I'll be doing this semester. And I just started this past month with Ball State in the Masters of Science in Information and Communication Systems, or excuse me, Sciences. And very excited about the opportunity and the classes that I've been involved in this first semester as the first online cohort. If you're interested as a individual who's working and needing something a little bit more flexible, I think this definitely fits the bill. At the beginning of the semester, we talked about the emotionally intelligent leader and how this leader needed to be at the basis for the things that will happen in technology going forward, because there will be many challenges and different approaches going forward. In fact, the way we live, clearly, the way we do business, very clearly, the way we interact with each other will change and has changed already. And that speed of change means that emotionally intelligent leaders going forward must be at the forefront. Or we must realize that we need to be emotionally intelligent and start to build that within ourselves going forward. We're in the second week of talking among many things, actually. This isn't just the only book that we're reading, The Inevitable by Kevin Kelly. Actually reading several things as we do in a grad program. No big surprise there. But what I did a little bit differently, instead of, as you often have to in these situations, you have to skim books and look at the front and the back and so on, I decided to go to the middle. In the middle of the book is chapter 5 and 6. And Kelly talks about the pivot points of an accessibility world that we'll be living in and a sharing world that we'll be living in. And so there must be an accessibility that is brought out, and I think it's very important going forward that we start to discuss something that is very vital. He says this: possession is not as important as it once was. Accessing is more important now than ever. And so our ideas of ownership are definitely going to change when we start to think about things, because now we'll be viewing them as a service. We're starting to see that even in the business world more and more so, where software as a service is the name of the game going forward. I see this where I work, where we are not developing necessarily roads, but we're developing a way of giving a service to the citizens of the state of Indiana. And so this accessibility will bring about a sort of new interaction with products and people based on our technology, because we will be living in a more socially integrated society based on our technologies. The second thing that is so important is this sharing that must go on. And I think he does a really good job to try and talk about the challenges that are faced with all types of terminologies with sharing, whether it's collectivism, socialism, so on. They carry a lot of baggage. Whether I think that they should or shouldn't is immaterial. But going forward, these technologies are going to create a very big challenge because of the political connotations, the social connotations behind them when we start to talk about sharing. And I think it's very important that we start to look at sharing as he points out, more than just sharing, but it dovetails into sharing, cooperation, collaboration, collectivism, and so on going forward. Because if we view it in that transitionary lens, we can then understand the technology that will be utilized behind it. Now, especially in organizations where we will be doing work, I believe accessibility and sharing will be at the forefront of everything that we do. I think in the sharing realm, we can definitely see how the technology of email has housed information between people or among just a few people in an email box when it has to be opened up by things like MS Teams, which Gartner has said will have just as huge of an impact on the world going forward as MS Outlook has in the past. Why? Because it allows for there to be a sharing that goes forward in communication that is open, so it doesn't get housed within one sphere or one sector. That will create a lot of challenges, obviously, going forward. But sharing will also lead to a sort of a different approach to governance and terms and conditions and how we decide to share going forward. But it will be on the end, so to speak, of this accessibility, meaning that the tools, the products, the ideas will be accessible more and more to people going forward, because instead of it being all about ownership, it will be about access to things. And let me bring this out. If you and I do not have access to a grocery store, we're going to feel unsafe. If we don't have access to a decent automobile, we're going to feel unsafe. And so going forward, less and less it will be about pure ownership, but it will be about accessibility to products, services, companies, work areas, so on and so forth, that provide a safety and meet a need that also brings about, on top of it, dealing with some of our wants. And that accessibility, you can see, you can fill in the blanks there of how that is going forward. Now, I think that there is two key things for organizations going forward with their people that will be a huge challenge, and it's a logistical challenge. We could talk about artificial intelligence, we could talk about cloud computing, we could talk about blockchain, we could talk about no-ops, we could talk about all kinds of things from a software and technologist perspective. But these ideas that he's bringing about don't necessarily focus just on the pure technology themselves, but they deal with a mindset that is behind the technologies. And so there will have to be a shift that goes on with a younger generation and also with a legacy generation. Why do I say that? Because for a younger generation to feel safe, to feel secure to some degree, to feel like they're contributing to their world, they will have to be in an environment where the legacy generation is providing an environment where they're just not leaving and going off to retirement, but they are making sure that they're not just investing in people through mentorship, but they're providing access and a limited framework, but a framework there to help them to build out into technologies of cloud computing, of rapid forms of communication, of artificial intelligence, and so on. Because if you limit the younger generation in that area and you leave it to the legacy people going forward, I think it's going to fizzle. Now here's what I stumbled on today, and that is visual thinking strategies. Now I'm going to put this in there as sort of almost an oddity, but an idea that I think will help us to create conversations in a unique way. And here's why. The crux of the situation in those two arenas of young and old, or in newbies and legacy people, is the fact that we're dealing with technologies that are very abstract, very hard to see, very hard to formulate in our mind. But we need to develop visual thinking behind it, or in front of it, or all around it. That creates a conversation. This visual thinking says, not just what do you see in this kombucha here, but what do you think about it? And it's been proven in academic settings, in museum service settings, and so forth, to create a conversation that allows everybody to be at the table and to provide what they're not just seeing, but what they're thinking at the time. And that's what's important with technology going forward. We're going to have to have a thinking generation. Love to hear your comments. Go ahead, post them before, and I'll see you next week.